a duet. What would you like to sing? A wise choice, a wise choice. Here's one thing we've proven today, that an LDS funeral, life celebration, apparently can't be done in an hour. I don't understand that. Nonetheless, it seems to be the case. As I thought about many, as you've heard, memories of Dad, I talk about literally dozens and dozens of them. I decided I wanted to just talk about something very recent because it was it brought a lot of joy. So here's what I would like to share with you today. I'll start off by saying this. Back in the 90s, some of you may recall a story that was written and was very popular at the time. It was Tuesdays with Morrie. It was a story about a dying professor and one of his former students who had become a journalist, and their interaction and lessons learned, and just a beautiful, beautiful story. And I sometimes think about that same experience that Morrie and his young former student had, very similar to the experience that I got to have with Sundays with Dad. And so I just share a couple of things with you. During the last several months of Dad's life, Dale and I would alternate Sundays, and we get to spend the whole day with Dad. And those were quite the adventures. It was just a real privilege to be able to spend an entire day with him. The rest of the heavy lifting went over here to Peta, who took great care of him for the rest of the time. And by the way, just really quick, Peta and Dad are really brothers from different mothers. And if you wanted to see love between two great men, it was between Peta and Ray. And it was just absolutely an amazing relationship, and in and of itself a great memory. Nonetheless, Dale and I did trade Sundays with Dad, and just got to have some great adventures together. I just want to share a couple of those with you. We were sometimes even joined by Ann and Becky, our wives. Sometimes it involved some of the grandkids and even the great-grandchildren as we went around with Dad and did a lot of different visits. And even though sometimes the names may have been lost to him, he always seemed to know that there was a connection, a special connection between him and all of these other people. And he always had a smile for them as they would come up and say, "Hi, Grandpa." Typically, our Sundays started with church. So there's a small branch called the Legacy House branch, which is where Dad was living. And so he looked forward to church on Sunday mornings. And he always participated to the degree that he could. He enjoyed singing hymns, listening to the lessons, and taking the sacrament. He even offered a prayer or two along the way. The Legacy House branch is a place of love, and it made attending there a joy for all of us. Dad always loved the outdoors, so Sundays together frequently included a drive up into the mountains, where he was always ready and willing to point out an interesting tree, a cluster of flowers, or a majestic mountainside. And while his disease made it hard for him to speak, he seemed to always have a few simple words to communicate his enthusiasm for what he saw. Ever the teacher, he continued to teach us of his love for the beauties of nature, and his enthusiasm was contagious, and we just all benefited from that. So whether it was the Alpine Loop, Cascade Springs, Heber Valley, the Nebo Loop. He was always ready for an adventure. One of his favorite phrases, even up till near the very end, was, "Let's go." And so it was a treat. He was always interested in and frequently commented on all the new construction that he would see around him. We lived down in Saratoga Springs, and so we'd often take him down there just so he could see his grandkids and we could enjoy some meals together. But he was absolutely fascinated with all the new construction and how many homes there were. And he always had comments about that. He called them the brown houses, the ones that had just the wood, the new construction. But one of his favorite things was to drive up by the Saratoga Springs Temple. And he always commented about how beautiful the temple and the temple grounds were. And then he was also fascinated by all the new homes that are being built around the temple down there. And he thought he was really funny. And so he would often say, "So Kent, which one of these is your home?" And I would tell him, I said, "Dad, this is so far out of my league, none of these are mine." Well, that didn't seem to satisfy him, so he just would decide which one was mine. So he would just randomly point to homes and go, "Oh, there's your new house right there. That one looks really nice." He did that frequently, and always, whenever he would say that, he'd look over at you with this mischievous grin, knowing that he was thinking he was very funny. The other thing that he did that just showed how he maintained a great sense of humor even in his last days is he knows that I really disdain Russian olive trees. That's a whole other story for another time. But he knows that I just, not my thing. So he would always think it was funny to point them out to me. He goes, "Oh, there's Kent's favorite trees." And again, the mischievous little grin that would go with that. And then they became Kent's trees. So he was just a great one just to interact, have a great sense of humor, and just a sense of joy and wonder about everything that he did. One particular Sunday, we took a trip up to his beloved alma mater that you've heard, up in Aggieville, up there in Logan, to Utah State University, where we had lived all as a young family early in his college career. And so walking around Old Main, if you're familiar with that, and then out onto the university quad, brought a big smile to his face. Just made his whole countenance brighten just being up there. It's clearly the fond memories of that very special place were still with him. So I'm forever grateful for Sundays with Dad. And like so many lessons that he taught us that you've already heard about over many years, these last Sundays together were reinforcing, insightful, enlightening, and at times profound. They were always sweet and delightful days. A scripture that comes to my mind when I think about my dad is John 10:10, which reads in part, "I am come that they might have life, and that they might have it more abundantly." Dad lived the abundant life, and he helped so many others who were privileged to know him to experience the abundant life to a greater degree. That same abundance that we all who knew him now enjoy in our own lives. Dad not only had a powerful personal testimony, but he lived his testimony abundantly. And that is something all of us can remember and strive to do better. I love you, Dad. Thank you.